Hi, you're listening to a student-focused episode of the Sociology Show podcast. If you're studying the subject at GCSE, A-level, foundation, degree, or any other discipline, then this podcast could be of help to you. If you have a question for the show, then you can email the Sociology Show podcast at gmail.com, and one of the teachers, lecturers, examiners, or experts will answer your question for you. You can sponsor the show on the GoFundMe page and subscribe on all the usual podcast platforms. If you're going to class, going to the gym, or just chilling, put your headphones in and let's be sociology geeks together, eh? Hello and welcome to the Sociology Show. The Sociology Show podcast is brought to you in association with Tutor2U Sociology, the exam performance specialists for A-level and GCSE sociology students and teachers. And so you can visit their website, which is tutor2u.net/sociology, and there you can pick up revision guides, flashcards, revision videos, and everything else that you need for your A-level or GCSE sociology studies. And so onto this episode, and my guest is Dr Wendy Podd from the University of Sunderland. Wendy, thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, you're more than welcome, Matthew. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's start by you telling us a little bit about who you are, what you do, Wendy.
Okay, so I'm currently the programme leader for sociology at the University of Sunderland. I've been programme leader for about 3 years, but I've actually been at the university since 2006 when I started my degree there.
So Wendy, we first kind of got in touch because I think I mentioned on one of my podcasts that as a teacher, one of the most common questions I get asked is what can you do with the sociology qualification, or what can you do with the sociology degree? And that's how we started talking. So did you want to say a little bit about that? Because I know that's an area that you're working in yourself at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. It's over the last year, it's really been a kind of major bugbear of mine, if you like, and I thought, right, I need to do something about this. So over time and memorial that I've been involved in sociology, one of the key questions is, but what can you do with a sociology degree? And as somebody who has taught across criminology, health and social care, and sociology for 13 years at the university, I've kind of always viewed sociology students in particular as being able to have a much broader reach in terms of the kind of things that they're interested in, the kind of jobs that they wanted to go on to. And so when we have open days, it's a key question that we get asked predominantly by parents. And so one of my issues around this, I've kind of said to sociology staff in the past, I blame Maureen Lipman. Now, do you know who I'm referring to?
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, in 1988, the British Telecom, they produced an advert with Maureen Lipman in, and in it, she says, "You've got an ology." Now, I kind of did some research around this because, sociology being evidence-based, I'll go and find out what that is. So what's happening in the advert is she's telephoning her grandson to congratulate him, and she's got a celebratory cake for him and everything. And he says to her, "I failed everything." And so she says, "What, maths, English, science?" And she asks, "Did you not pass anything?" And the grandson replies, "Well, I passed pottery and sociology." To which she replies, "He gets an ology and he says he failed. You're a scientist if you've got an ology." Now, that to me, in a sense, the fact that the grandson has kind of said that he failed everything is that, suggesting that the pottery and the sociology is a kind of non-subject.
Yes.
So I kind of had this sense, I used to always joke on saying, I blame Maureen Lipman for this. So that's where that kind of came from.
That's interesting. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was just thinking of a couple of other examples. You just mentioned 80s, because of course we had the young ones in the 80s as well, where Rick Mail did a sociology degree. I wonder if that gave
Yes.
a bad name as well.
Yeah. And I think it is that kind of, that it's this non-entity subject. But I kind of see it as one of the broadest subjects that you could possibly choose to do, really. So I've kind of used that as a cornerstone to go and look at, right, actually, where do sociology graduates go? And in part, I've kind of done that for us as a department. I've done it in terms, in kind of response to, you know, the threat that sociology degrees have been under kind of historically. But also, so I could have some real concrete evidence and real concrete examples as to where and how well sociology students do. So I started to undertake some research, and that's how we've kind of ended up in touch, as you said.
So before we go into how you collect your results and your research, I'm just interested in what you said. You know, there's still this perception among some people that sociology is a soft subject, if you like, or it's not. It doesn't have the status of other subjects. So other than Maureen Lipman, do you know where that's come from? Because, you know, that's still existing even today. I still get parents saying to me, oh, is it a serious subject? Is it a soft subject? Is it an easy subject? Any other ideas where that idea's come from, Wendy?
I mean, when I've talked to people about this idea about sociology and what you've just said there, is that one of the common things that come back is about it being perceived as a kind of elitist subject.
Right.
And something that is kind of more in line with, say, philosophy, for example. And so, you know, when we look at the forefathers, if you like, of sociology and how it's developed and its history, that I think that in part has, sociology still has that kind of old-fashioned perception of it, and that there's a bit of a gap between these founding fathers, you know, white middle-class academics, and so I think really part of embarking on this research and looking at how it really applies now, my colleague Drew, who you've had on here before, you know, has talked about sociology for the 21st century. So I think that, you know, along with your show and some of the other kind of organisations that are sprouting up, that is demonstrating the relevance of sociology today, that I think it kind of needs, it's going through a bit of a makeover, if you like, to kind of move away from that. It's about sitting in a classroom and therefore it's in academia and it doesn't really apply to the real world, in inverted commas. And so I think that, you know, I feel like it's my kind of job really to be going, well, actually, no, let's look at how this translates to today. Where do you think this comes from?
I don't know. I wondered if it's kind of an old-seated idea. I mean, I can think back to when I was first doing my A-levels myself, and you needed certain qualifications to be able to do it. And some of the natural sciences required you to have 6 or 7 good GCSEs, and sociology you needed 4. And I don't know if there's a slight snobbery attached to that, and that's where it came from, this idea. And possibly in terms of the universities that do it as well. But, you know, I've had conversations with parents before who are concerned about their son or daughter wanting to do sociology at degree, saying, you know, can you do it at degree? And when I explain you can do it at Cambridge, suddenly there's a light bulb moment. And they're like, really? Oh, okay. And they had no idea that sociology could be studied at the likes of Cambridge at all. Yeah.
And I think the other thing, I mean, I teach qualitative research because I'm extremely bad at maths. But I think it's also that divide within social sciences and science.
Yes.
And how we have this kind of fascination and there is a dominance in terms of, so if you just take qualitative research and quantitative research, that somehow qualitative and statistical information has more validity. Yeah. And so when we're undertaking subjects like looking at experiences of domestic violence, for example, qualitative researchers have a lot more of a hard time putting their methodology together, because it's like, oh, well, you might have turned up on that day and you might feel a certain way, and this is just one woman's experience. Well, that experience is actually really, really valid, yeah? And I kind of talk to students all the time about, okay, so yes, we do need statistical information, but we know with things like homelessness, domestic violence, sex trafficking, that a lot of these issues that we look at in society are hidden. They have that iceberg kind of element to them. So yes, we might see that more reporting of domestic violence incidents have gone up statistically, but we actually know there are reasons why people don't report that. And so it's kind of what lies beneath the surface of that. And so using qualitative methods, that's when we get to speak to people to understand their experiences, but still somehow that kind of social science element or that qualitative element is seen as less valuable as kind of being a scientific, yeah, I'm following an equation, the statistics, and therefore somehow that's more valid. So I kind of think that there's a kind of connection there in terms of the sciences, if you like.
I also wondered as well, you said about sociology being broad. Could that also affect the reputation as well? You know, if you've already got an idea of what you want to go to in a particular field of medicine, for example, it's a lot more direct the route you're going, whereas sociology, because it is broad, it's not necessarily going to lead you to become a sociologist. It can take you into lots of different avenues.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, that I was just talking to the dissertation students this morning because they're about the hand in their subject. And, you know, I think that we'll have students coming to university, some who have a very clear idea about what it is that they want to do, some that don't know what they want to do. But that engagement in looking at all different issues in society can lead students into areas that they had never considered before, because they become interested. And I think that's the beauty of sociology. I think if I thought of anything about our students, is that they're passionate about social injustices, they're passionate about social change. And so predominantly, those are the kind of students I see coming through a sociology degree. But when they come in, they've got one idea, and because they learn about so many things, they leave wanting to do something completely different.
Wendy, can we go into your collection of research and data, if you like, then, that you mentioned earlier on in the show? So how have you been collecting what sociology students go on to do later on after their degree?
Okay, so I mean, after the Maureen Lipman, what I actually did was I started by looking at famous graduates and who is out there in the world that people might know, that nobody might suspect that they did kind of a sociology degree. And then I've kind of looked around prospect and graduate market surveys, looked at the kind of market, the kind of graduate market in terms of looking at what the growing sectors are. But what I also did was I did a survey that I sent to our past graduates, and I kind of got in touch with them, and it was, where are you now? What are you doing now? And so I asked them what their job title was. I asked them what they learned while they were on their degree. But then the key thing was saying to them, how do you use your sociology degree in your everyday workplace? So, I mean, I've kind of looked at it from the kind of big data collection in terms of universities, in terms of the graduate market, and also the experiences of our students.
Okay, could we start with the people that have done a sociology degree or something related to sociology then? Who might be out there that people were unaware of?
I mean, I think one of the ones that I have on here that people have been more surprised at was President Reagan, Ronald Reagan, who was the American politician. He was the 40th president of the United States. And of course, he was an actor beforehand. And so when I've done this with some graduates, they are the ones that they're kind of more surprised at. We have Dr. King, who was probably, civil rights movements from 1955. Somebody I didn't know was Dan Aykroyd from the Blues Brothers and Ghostbusters, Canadian actor. We have Saul Alinsky, which is a bit more obvious to people who've read into sociology, but he was a community activist and political theorist. The one that I absolutely loved, do you know Ron Moody? Do you know who he is?
No.
Oh my gosh. So he played Fagin in Oliver Twist.
Oh, right. Oh, yes.
Right. Yeah. So, and I, of course, my background is around youth studies, and I always used to use a quote from Charles Dickens as the kind of romantic image of young people's situations, but then backed up in terms of Engels' study on the working class, which was kind of the reality. So I absolutely loved that I saw Ron Moody was there. Of course, there's Robin Williams, who is an American comedian and actor. James Blunt. Did you know that he did sociology?
I didn't know. I've met him before, actually. He lives in Ibiza. I've seen him out there before. I had no idea. I could have struck up a conversation had I known.
There you go. You'll have to get back in touch. And the other thing was that he actually served in the Kosovo War as well.
Wow.
So he did his degree, went to the Kosovo War, and he's come back and now he's a singer, songwriter and recorder. We also have Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. And she did a lot of work in terms of women, the balance of women's careers and families, and did a lot in terms of promoting educational arts. And Shirley Chisholm started out as a teacher in 1968, and she was the first Black woman to be elected to United States Congress, representing New York's 12th district. Emily Batch, who's the other final one that I've got on here, who was an American economist, sociologist, and pacifist. She won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1946 for her work with the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. So I think by just finding who some of the famous faces were, to see, what have they gone on to do? And I think you couldn't get a more varied range of people. Yeah. And I think you mentioned to me that you had a favourite famous sociologist graduate.
Well, there's a couple that first spring to mind. Often the students hear about Anthony Giddens when they're learning about Giddens, and the more they read about him, they realise just how fundamental he was in sort of pushing Tony Blair's government into power in 1997. A lot of Tony Blair's ideas were based on the work of Anthony Giddens. My personal favourite author, actually, is Mike Gale. I don't know if anyone's heard Mike Gale. He writes really, really lovely kind of bromance novels, I guess you say. And he did a sociology degree himself. He brings out one book a year. I absolutely love his book. So he's another one. So yeah, going into something like literature as well. So it really does show you the diversity of where people head, certainly.
Yeah. Definitely, and I think that the conclusion, one of the conclusions I've come through by looking at all this information really is about how much a sociology degree is about, as much as it's about learning outcomes and essays and graduating, how much it is about a kind of personal journey and a personal development journey of actually finding out what it is that you do want to do. And I'm not sure how many of the degrees I can think of where that would come from.
Wendy, I was interested to go to the next stage of what you said from your research. The kind of diversity of jobs that people go into. Obviously, we've just mentioned in terms of famous people, anything from literature to acting to politics. But what does your what do your findings show in terms of the different directions that past students have gone on to?
Okay, so from the actual graduates that that got back to me, which 17 did, and it's from across a broad range of time periods. And I'm still getting them back as we speak, really. So 13 out of the 17 graduates actually went on to further research, which is backed up by the kind of the Higher Education Statistics Agency, that more sociologists actually enjoy what they do and they go on to do further research. The examples from our students has been MAs in social researching, lots go on to teacher training, international development work. One of our students went on to do an MA in social work, and we have one who went on to do a PhD. But overall, I kind of broke them down into kind of categories. And so 4 of our past graduates went on to become a researcher or project manager. Amy, one of our students, is actually a research manager now for a multinational research agency. She just graduated 3 years ago, so I think that's an amazing achievement. 4 of the past graduates have actually gone on to be an academic tutor. We have 3 of those within our department, which we're kind of really proud of in terms of, we just can't get rid of them. But it's really good because they've been through the course and then they're teaching the current students. Another 3 graduates are actually going are in schools teaching. And, when we look at across the UK, there are 62 sixth form colleges and there are 98 universities who offer sociology degrees or combined. So there are a lot of I think teaching is not something that our students have come in thinking about, but by the time they go, they've kind of fallen in love with the subject and they want to go and then teach the next generation of sociologists. 2 of our students work within the criminal justice system. So I know that that's an area that, there are students who come on open days and they're kind of like, oh, should I do criminology or should I do sociology? And again, I think this comes back to employability, that with criminology, that it's viewed as it's a lot more kind of a concrete direction in terms of a career. But we have one student who's working as a family program manager within a prison, and one who is working as a probation service officer. So that is an area. 2 of the students work within the local authority. One that we have, Rachel, she works as a program support worker with adults with autism within the local authority, and the other student works within children's services. One student secured an internship. She actually is at the university with us, but she works on a super award scheme that's about developing student skills and CVs. And this one came in just before I finished putting it together for the show. Katie, who graduated in 2013, would you believe in 2019 she became the youngest elected councillor in Durham, and she currently holds the position of Chairman of Durham County Council and Mayor of Durham.
That's impressive. I was just trying to do the maths. So how old would she be?
So she must have graduated when she was about 21.
Yeah.
I did have a look, but I've not got it written on my notes in front of me, so she'll be about 25.
Wow.
But couldn't believe that. I was like, wow, oh my goodness, you know? So I think that even though when I look at this, I'm not kind of surprised myself, because obviously we build these relationships with our students and we kind of know what they're interested in, so we will help and guide them as much as we can. But I think in terms of people who don't know what sociologists don't go and do, I think it kind of shows, even though it's just 17 graduates so far, and I want to continue it on, I think there are just some really incredible stories there in terms of where they've ended up, and I feel very proud of these students.
I think what's also interesting is just how many of them want to continue on with something within the field or continuing researching. They don't want to let it go. I mean, that's one of the reasons why someone like myself ends up in sociology teaching, because even at the end of the degree, they don't want to let it go. They want to carry on learning. That seems to be quite a common theme there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why I actually looked to see how many sixth forms and how many universities actually offered sociology. And like I say, it's not something, you know, students come in with their passions and their ideas about the world and things that they might want to focus on, but the amount of students who fall in love with the research and the teaching, I mean, that is more significant than the areas. There is varieties in terms of the areas that they go into. But like I said, you know, 3 of those academic tutors, they're in our department because they don't want to leave.
Yeah, well, we have every so often for sociology teachers, you know, you get the occasional conference when we're not in COVID times, you know, and where you get to hear from the sociologists speak, and it's just absolutely lovely to be a student again, listening to someone talk with passion and expertise about a particular field. It's lovely to sit on that side of the classroom, if you like.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, I just mentioned before about the dissertation students this morning. I mean, I was saying to them, because I mean, one is looking at class, one is looking at education policy, another one is looking at women, policies aimed at women. And I said to them this morning, I said, look, we could maybe put something on with what you have done, because it's all like a very similar area, but you have all looked at it in a slightly different angle. And so I think that, I mean, that's something I'm really interested and passionate in myself, is that this isn't just about a degree. It's about, you know, what you're passionate in and how we can support you move forward. Because I mean, just the standard of the work that they've produced this year is absolutely amazing. So I think that should be celebrated, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned this when I was talking to your colleague, Drew, that I just think it's so important that students do something that they're passionate and interested in. It's not always just about the outcome and what job and how much you're going to earn at the end of it. You know, it's 3 or 4 years of your life. Do something that you love.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I mean, I took over the dissertation from the late Pete Rushton, who was our professor, and I took over the dissertation supervision. And, you know, students would come in and I'd say, what are you going to do? Oh, well, I did really well in this module, so I'm going to focus my dissertation on this. And I always say, you are a sociologist. You could do a dissertation on toast.
Yes.
You could do one on avocado. There are so many subjects. And then what I say to them is, you know, if you are wanting to do further study, which I mean, I think out of the 20 that we have now, at least half of them want to go on and do MAs now. And I say, right, okay, well, why not do something in your dissertation that maybe is more extended literature, where you're doing the groundwork for an MA. But if they're wanting to go in a particular job direction, So say domestic violence, or they want to work in local authorities or youth probation. I'll say, well, how about you focus your dissertation on that? Because then when everybody else is graduating and you have your interview and they ask you if you know anything about that subject, you can say, well, yes, I've just written 10,000 words about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's about, I think it's about like making very clear, I think, the things that we've maybe just taken for granted in the subject.
And then the other area that you mentioned, Wendy, was that you've been asking about how ex-students use sociology within their job. So what kind of responses have you got from that question?
Right, okay. So this kind of, it fits, because what I did was I kind of looked about what what employers wanted, yeah? And so what I kind of did was pull back, yeah, what they'd learned. So I kind of grouped it into themes, really, in terms of the skills that they developed and then how they use that in their everyday. So, you know, obviously intellectual thinking, research and teamwork and organisation and all those things that go with study, yeah? But then when we get down to the actual experiences, I mean, I've just got some quotes in front of me because I've made case studies of these students. And Amy, who is the research manager, she says, this is the question of how it applies to their everyday work. And so Amy says, being able to deliver actionable insights relies upon going simply beyond what you're told. My sociology degree enables me to have some idea of the societal background, whether cultural or structural, and how that influences behaviour. Along with first-hand evidence, this provides us with full picture. At every stage of the project I'm developing, I consider the impact that class, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, and other identities could have on people's behaviours. Wow. Rachel, who works at Autism, says, you know, I've learned, you know, sociology every day is about making a difference to people's lives. After studying sociology, I always wanted a career where I'd somehow be making a difference, and now I do that every single day. Oh, it's making me want to cry.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Daniel, my degree helped me with debating and communication skills due to the discussions we had. You had to listen to what others said and then reply with your own thoughts in a sensitive manner. My sociology degree has also helped me with public speaking when I give presentations, something I would need very much later on in my career. Most importantly, now get this, because this really came out across a lot of the answers and it absolutely blew my mind. Most importantly, a sociology degree helps people develop empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, that came out across a few students' responses.
But that's really interesting, isn't it? If we go back to some of the people that you mentioned right at the start who've got a sociology degree, you know, you mentioned Martin Luther King, Michelle Obama. These are people that develop those skills of empathy without a doubt.
Yeah. And I mean, how amazing. I mean, in university and schools, etc., when we're developing curriculums, we're often kind of bound within learning outcomes, learning objectives, program outcomes, etc. But to hear that back from students, it totally blew my mind, you know, that actually that is not something that is an intended learning outcome of your program.
Yeah.
And I just think, wow, that, you know, I just found it amazing, and I found it really touching, actually. And, you know, the conversations we were having with the surgeons about Black Lives Matter in the George Floyd trial last night, they were saying that's what we need. We need more people with empathy.
Yeah. It's lovely to hear an outcome which isn't a grade.
Yeah.
What did you get from your degree? What did you get from studying this, and not just hearing a grade? I think that's lovely to hear. Fantastic responses, that, Wendy. And did you learn anything else from the feedback that you've got other than the bits that we've mentioned already?
I mean, I've only got a few out in front of me at the moment, and it is definitely something that I want to take on. But the other one that I've got here that I kind of look at is from Lisa, who graduated in 2018. And she's actually an academic tutor now. And she says companies are always joyful when employees have a sociology degree, because the skills are ultimately transferable to any career. In my experience, employers look for employees who understand policies and procedures and can provide solutions to the diverse nature of society. Sociology helps with this as it equips individuals with a depth of understanding of how the world works, how communities and cultures work, what problems they face, and how solutions can be formed. And so, I think the ones that I took out as a snapshot are very much reflective across the 17 students who've kind of responded so far.
And that's, going back to what we said earlier, I think that is another benefit of the subject, and not that sociology is the only one that does this, but to be able to think critically, not just learning facts or learning something by rote and then memorizing it and putting it in an exam, but to actually think outside the box, to think critically, to challenge something. They're such important skills, aren't they?
Oh, very much so. And while that kind of survey was out, I was doing some groundwork, right, that was looking at the higher education statistics, because what I wanted to do, and the statistics that we have to work with is 2017, 2018, and that shows graduate destinations 15 months after. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of do a comparison of sociology with other programs. And so, for example, some of in terms of the graphs that you can get within that survey, is that contrary to popular belief, 68% of sociology graduates are in full-time employment. 15 months after graduation, and medium skills, they earn around 20 plus £1,000, and higher skills. Now, a comparison with some other subjects, for example, communications and media studies, that's 65%, politics is 65%, and psychology, is 63%. So actually, and also in terms of criminology was only 1% higher. So when you look at a course like criminology that's viewed as kind of having more employability related, there's only 1% difference in terms of securing graduate jobs. And then when you look at further study, for criminology, that's 13%, and for sociology, that's 14%. So that kind of really backs up some of the things I've just mentioned about my research and your experience in terms of falling in love with research and wanting to go on to do further study. So really, sociology, when you drill down into the numbers, it is comparable to other programs.
And I'm guessing the plan is, Wendy, after getting such lovely responses so far, that you're going to keep this going, keep it growing?
Definitely. I really want to do some more work. I think, seeing students come back with terms like, I've learned empathy I mean, that to me is just an absolute dream, right? Like, what amazing people we've got out there in the world working with children and young people in all parts of the community. So I kind of really do want that going. But I also have to say that that is as well testament to the staff at the university, and that kind of encouragement and support, and the fact that we view it as a kind of holistic journey and not just come on in, sit down, we're going to teach 3 years, see you later. Yeah, that it's about more than that. One of the other things that I looked at with the comparison of the subject comparisons with the education survey was that there was a report released by the Graduate Market, which is a High Flyers Research Limited. And in that review of graduate vacancies and starting salaries, that's in line with the UK's leading employers. Now, if you given the COVID world that we've had over the last year and a bit, what I was really surprised to see is that when you look on any kind of sociology like the BSc or Prospect, you'll see that the majority of sociology students go into areas of advice worker, international aid, development, policy officer, etc. And third sectors. Now, according to High Flyers, one of the biggest increases, the only other highest one was oil and energy, but one of the biggest growth was the charity and voluntary sectors in terms of recruitment, which was 24.1%. And the public sector in terms of hiring of graduates was up by 7%, and that was in the last year. So I think if we take this idea that sociology has quite a broad reach in terms of employment, that our graduates are developing compassion and empathy along with their critical thinking and analysis skills. If you think about the broad reach that COVID's had in terms of society, there's going to be a lot of cleanup to do over the next years. And so I was really gladdened to see that investment in the kind of employment opportunities around charity, voluntary, public sectors is on the increase. And we're going to need critical thinkers to address some of the kind of inequalities that have had the light shone on them over this last year. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
I think that's really important. And actually, Ben Hewitson from the All Take One Sociology podcast, he'd done some research as well, and also found that sociology is one of the biggest growth areas and predicted to be one of the biggest growth areas for obvious reasons over the next few years as well. So that kind of backs up exactly what you're saying.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's something that's backed up by the British Sociological Foundation as well, is about, that employers they want critical thinkers, and that actually we need them to kind of move out of some of the problems that we've got. And I tell you, when I was looking at the what employers wanted, I came across a term, I don't know if you ever have, I haven't, but the top 5 skills that employers were after is organisation, communication, teamwork, job-related skills, and commercial awareness. And I looked at commercial awareness and I was like, I've never heard about that before. Have you?
It sounds very businessy to me, but
doesn't it?
Yeah.
So being the good sociologist that I am, I was like, right, okay, what does that mean? Now, commercial awareness, would you believe, is research skills, data analysis, understanding organizations and institutions.
Yeah.
Now, that I'd never heard about that. This is from Reed. So it's a kind of survey on career advice and graduate skills of what employers want. And so they're saying no matter what industry you're in, almost all hiring managers value commercial awareness. Shows you how long it is since I applied for a job, right?
Well, it's good to know. I need to get that in the prospectuses and in the leaflets as well, to say this is another skill that you gained from sociology. That's a good one.
Yeah. And it says this means that you can show understanding of market trends, the business, their competitors, customers, and service users, and how that's vital in terms of product. Well, that's what Amy says she does in her everyday job, right?
Yeah.
About considering the impact of class, ethnicity, and gender. And then it says, although work experience and study will help you develop commercial awareness, it's not the only way that you can get it. You can get this through volunteering, internships, curricular activities, voluntary experience to better understand the area that you want to go into. And it also says, actively following and reading social media feeds, company emails and journals, read journals, to stay in the loop of what's happening in your field. Well, that to me, I don't know about you, Matthew, but that sounds to me like that means sociologists.
It sounds pretty spot on to me.
Isn't it amazing? I'd never heard of it before, so...
There we go. If we haven't convinced anyone stuttering about whether they should do a sociology degree yet, if we haven't convinced them yet, I'm not sure what will.
Yeah, and I do think that there is some really exciting things happening. Like, I mean, your show for one, there's a great international website. The name escapes me at the moment, but they're looking, it's case studies about how sociology is being applied around the world, whether it's research or people's studies. And so I do really feel very optimistic about challenging the perceptions of sociology, because I think you can do so much more with it.
I do think you've got a whole generation a lot more interested in those issues. Just in the last year, we've had the George Floyd murder, the discussions on ethnicity. We've had Sarah Everard and the discussions on gender, sexism, misogyny. Just in the last week, we've had the issue with the Super League, the football teams, and that's related to Marxism and greed and so on. So these kind of issues are being discussed by a wide range of people all the time. And I think a younger age group are becoming more interested in it as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, my son, he's 11, and obviously his mother is a sociologist, so he listens to lots of meetings that I have. And he was at a PHS lesson at school a few weeks ago, and they were talking about democracy. And apparently his teacher had pulled him aside outside, and he said, you should maybe think about doing a sociology degree when you're older. And he came home and he felt very proud of that, And I think that for my son's age, who's 11, they're seeing all of this. They've seen the last year. They are more switched on to inequalities and injustice at their age. So I do feel very, very optimistic.
That's good. The next generation of sociology, all we need to do now is make sure that we get it into secondary schools and as a compulsory subject. That's the next step.
Definitely. I mean, my son, we were on a waiting list for a school, and I've just been sitting before we've met today comparing the two different schools. Now, one of them has sociology as an option for their GCSEs, right? And I'm like, wow, okay, that's GCSE, great. So I do think there is going to have to be that shift, a societal shift in terms of how we address the social issues that we have kind of locally, nationally and globally. So yeah, I'm going to keep on going with this research and collect more and more. And I kind of want to make it a very pragmatic thing that I can share with parents and prospective students or not. So yeah, we'll see where it all goes.
That's fantastic work, Wendy. It's fantastic. And just for the listeners, if someone wanted to get in touch, follow you on Twitter, do you want to give out your details?
Yes, I can. When I find them, I think it's Wendy Podd. That's Podd, not a podcast pod. And yeah, you can find me on the University of Sunderland website. If you've got any questions, I'll be happy to have a chat or arrange a meeting with you. But happy for anybody to follow or get in touch. Yep.
Brilliant. And keep up the good work, Wendy, and let's keep in touch, and I'll be really interested to hear some more replies in the future.
Oh, definitely will. Thank you so much for your time. And
thank you.
I love your show. It's great.
Thank you. Best wishes, Wendy. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for The Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.